Lamar Jackson has been one of the most heavily debated NFL players in recent memory. It seems like everyone you talk to has a different take, which, considering his undeniably impressive resume, is a little bit surprising. At just 23 years of age, heading into the 2020 NFL season, Jackson has already made the playoffs twice in his first 2 NFL seasons. Not to mention the fact that he's earned Pro Bowl and All-Pro honors, both coming in 2019, his only full season as a starter in the league. Oh, and in case anyone forgot, he was quite literally the league's most valuable player in 2019, earning all 50 first-place votes, making him the second unanimous MVP in NFL history. And anytime you can join Tom Brady as the only other guy to do something, you are usually doing something right. Jackson has been a joy to watch since taking over for Flacco in 2018. Not only is he a dominant force performance-wise, but he is one of the most spirited competitors in the game today. Because if you ask me, he is just about as gritty as you can be up there, especially when you've reached such an elite level of talent. You can just see how much every game matters to him. His grit served him well during his rookie season, as it helped him round out some of his inconsistent rookie performances. But during his 2019 campaign, Lamar Jackson took his game to a whole new level and absolutely dominated the competition. And for everyone who loves to throw shade at Lamar for his passing, sorry, but 2019 all but cemented the fact that he can do it both through the air and on the ground. Obviously, his ability to scramble and create plays with his legs helps to support his passing. But that is no reason to downplay what he did throwing the ball downfield last season. Week in and week out, opposing defensive coordinators were ripping their hair out, attempting to at least slow him down, because stopping Lamar entirely seemed out of the question. Jackson's league-leading marks and passing touchdowns and quarterback rushing yards made him just the second quarterback to do so in NFL history. And once again, he was in pretty good company, joining Hall of Famer Steve Young, who completed the same feat back in 1994. Although Young did do it with only 293 rushing yards compared to Jackson's 1,206 yards. A number that is truly cartoonish. That number didn't just blow away the rest of the league's signal callers, it was actually good enough to land him 6th place in the entire NFL in rushing yards, which for quarterback is insane. Lamar Jackson certainly has more in common with Steve Young than Tom Brady, at least in terms of play style. But both of those comps that we've mentioned already pale in comparison to one former NFL player who, much like Lamar, was a true dual-threat quarterback in every sense of the expression. We're talking about a guy who in many ways is a more accurate marker for what Jackson has accomplished in the league so far, particularly in the way that Jackson has sheerly dominated opposing defenses. That man is Colin Kaepernick. There are actually a shocking amount of similarities between Kaep and Lamar, both statistically and anecdotally, particularly in terms of how they got their start in the NFL, and some of the narratives that formed around the two quarterbacks. But let's start with what the two guys did on the field first. If you look back at the tapes from Kaepernick's time in the NFL, it's immediately clear he had a very similar skill set to Jackson. The way both guys play just sort of jumps off the screen at you. The shifty running style, the breakaway speed, the ability to fire the ball to all corners of the field, regardless of whether or not they had defensive linemen chasing them down. The visuals are strikingly similar, and although the sample size is admittedly a little small, particularly in Jackson's case, the numbers back the comp up too. Over 6 NFL seasons with the 49ers, Kaepernick threw for a total of 12,271 yards with 72 touchdowns and 30 interceptions for an 88.9 quarterback rating. While the averages are a little low, they don't tell the full story. During Kaep's run, San Francisco turned very much so into a franchise in flux, amid the power struggle between head coach Jim Harbaugh and the front office. Power struggle that eventually resulted in Harbaugh leaving town, which hurt the team and Kaepernick in particular. But during his 2 best seasons as the full-time starter under Harbaugh, his yardage totals range from 3,197 to 3,369. Right around the 3,127 mark that Lamar hit in 2019. It is worth noting that Lamar did only play 15 games in 2019, sitting out a meaningless Week 17 matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Ravens had already clinched home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Had he played that one more game, he probably would have ended up in the same range as Kaepernick's averages. Jackson certainly has the edge on passing touchdowns. Kaepernick never even came close to the 36 touchdowns that Jackson led the league with in 2019. But even so, there is no denying the explosive arm talent that Kaepernick exhibited during his prime. There have been few guys that could extend the field and take the top off the defense in the way he did. In fact, his raw arm strength, in a weird way, almost overshadowed his rushing ability. Here's one little tidbit that might surprise you. Although Lamar's rushing totals were massive, particularly in 2019, his career yards per attempt of 5.9 is actually lower than Kaep's 6.1. But his 10.4 career attempts per game just about doubles Kaepernick's 5.4. There are countless more statistical similarities, both in single game and season-long marks, but I don't want to bore you guys with just the numbers.
Boring.
To be honest with you, the craziest part about these two men's careers is found in the, let's say, the coincidences that you'll find when you take a closer look at their stories. Let's start with their early days. Both quarterbacks played their college ball at schools that aren't necessarily known for their football programs. Jackson spent 3 years at the University of Louisville, where he won the Heisman Trophy, and Kaepernick played at Nevada, a program with an even lower pedigree than Louisville. As a result, neither guy was a particularly high draft pick, despite having put forth some insane performances at the college level. Jackson was the last pick in the first round of the 2018 draft, 32nd overall, while Kaep fell into the early second round, going number 36 overall to the Niners. And it wasn't just where these guys were taken in the draft and the small schools they hailed from, but both quarterbacks were actually drafted by a Harbaugh brother. Kaepernick by Jim and Lamar by John. While this may seem like a crazy coincidence, it might be a little more deliberate than you would think at first glance. Because although Jim and John are both fiery competitors, as brothers, they remain close and collaborate on some of their different strategies and philosophies on the game. And clearly, even though John bested Jim in what many dubbed the Harbaugh Bowl, he saw firsthand what Jim and Kaepernick were able to accomplish together, and sought to develop his own dual-threat quarterback once Flacco's time in Baltimore was up. I mean, John literally hired the same offensive coordinator that worked with Jim and Colin in San Francisco, a man named Greg Roman, who has built his reputation for his expertise in developing an offense around a mobile quarterback. The impact that Roman has had, both currently on Lamar and back in the day with Kaepernick, cannot be overstated. Just ask Marshall Yanda, an offensive lineman for the Ravens who gushed to NBC Sports about the diversity in Roman's playbook, something he believes put the team at a huge advantage. He's got the biggest playbook I've ever seen, Yanda said. We do a ton of stuff, keep defenses on edge every single week. He's gonna throw new wrinkles at them, keep them honest, and that's what you've gotta do. Defenses are too good to where if you're too predictable or too vanilla, they're going to take advantage of that. John Harbaugh, who is a defensive coach by trade, echoed that sentiment and explained how impressive Roman's adaptability has been for the team's offensive development. It's unique how he does it, but he does it based around the players that we have. Quarterback, offensive line, tight ends, all of our guys. He does a great job with that, according to what he thinks he's going to see on defense. There are so many factors to it, it's hard to even just sit there and list it all, because it's not ever going to be one thing. It isn't just the coaches around these guys that draw so many parallels either, but their NFL origin stories, for lack of a better term, are bizarrely similar. Both quarterbacks made themselves NFL known in very dramatic fashions. They burst onto the scene with performances that were nothing short of electric, once their respective teams were finally able to let go of the former first-round draft picks they had counted on as their QB1s for far too long. In the case of the Ravens, it was moving on from their decade-plus love affair with longtime starter Joe Flacco, who they took number 18 overall in the 2008 NFL Draft. And for the Niners, it was Alex Smith, a former number 1 overall pick back in 2005. Although saying that either team really let go of their mediocre quarterbacks might be giving them too much credit. Because while both organizations obviously do deserve some credit for having the foresight to draft these guys, both were equally hesitant to hand over the reins to their heir apparent. Kaepernick famously usurped Smith after he suffered a concussion, which was a very controversial decision at the time, because the team was actually having a great season with Alex under center. On the other hand, Baltimore waited around until the middle of November when they were 4-5 to let Lamar start, and he only got the opportunity because Flacco went down with a hip injury. And just like the Niners did with Kaepernick back in 2011, the Ravens thrived with Lamar, going 6-1 during his time under center. In his first start, Jackson set the franchise quarterback rushing record with 117 yards, leading the Ravens to a 24-21 victory. And he didn't stop there either. The shifty quarterback would finish the season with 1,201 passing yards, 6 passing touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, as well as leading all quarterbacks with 695 rushing yards, adding 5 rushing touchdowns as well. Both Lamar Jackson and Colin Kaepernick have ended up being very polarizing players, admittedly for vastly different reasons. But if you look at what both guys have done on the gridiron, their playing style is eerily similar. And when you add in the ties to the Harbaugh family, Greg Roman, and the way they both became starters in the NFL, the similarities get downright bizarre. There's no denying that thus far in his career, Lamar Jackson's story bears a strong resemblance to Kaepernick's. Let's just hope that Lamar's isn't as short-lived, because man, is he fun to watch. In your opinion, is Lamar Jackson the best quarterback in the NFL right now? Join us in the comment section below. And if you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton, and hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.